Good evening, everybody. Thank you for making it tonight. I know there is a big Bitcoin event going on, so but anyway, we couldn't choose another day for this one. But actually, this is the 12th of the year. You know, we do this meetup every month since October 2019, and even during COVID, we were doing the event online. And yeah, we had built a great community, and last time there was more than 55 people coming. And of course, you know, when you talk more about blockchain use cases, you know, enterprises, it's for people who are really interested in the tech. So, but anyway, I really thank you, all of you, for coming tonight. We have some great panelists. I would introduce them very quickly, but before, for the people who don't know us, my name is Max. I'm from Atato. Atato, we are a blockchain service company. We build blockchain platform for enterprises since 2017. And our team is there, part of our team is there, and we try to build this community around blockchain. And so some of you knows us already. And tonight we are going to talk about a subject that we like, of course, because it's blockchain for enterprises and blockchain use cases. Blockchain is not the same that it has been in 2018 and 2019. It's growing fast, it's changing. And tonight our two presenters are going to present their company first, but also what they did and what they expect blockchain to be in 2021. So we have with us Mr. Sanat, blockchain lead from IBM, and some of you know already Khun Bank from Smartcontract Thailand. So we're going to start with their presentation. After that, there will be kind of a discussion, Q&A. Please always feel free to ask some questions. So let's start with Sanat and after with Khun Bank. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, thanks Max for the introduction. As Max said, I'm from IBM. And IBM specifically, I take care of blockchain services. We have been working specifically last 1.5 years, 2 years with different changes that the blockchain use cases and the use cases that has been seeing around. So what as an agenda we wanted to discuss around here.
On the computer over there.
Oh, sorry. Not a problem.
Second.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Hey. Oh, cool. So, as just Max mentioned, the day's topic, what we wanted, or what from IBM I wanted to present was, what are the use cases that we worked in, looked at in 2020? What are some important changes globally, but having a significant impact maybe in the next year, in our view, in 2021? And simply what use cases we are looking at for the 2021. So that's all around what we thought that we could cover for today, and maybe we would love to discuss and understand from you on your review or your points, right? So the use cases that we actually worked for the year 2020 in first had specifically all around our solution called Trade Lens. The Trade Lens really the purpose or the motive of Trade Lens was to achieve the trade authentication. By trade authentication is the participants who are third-party logistics or who are in the supply chain, who are the trading partners, who are the international trade participants, and the customs authority, to achieve a trade's authentic state and the custody. That is specifically what is the state of that trade, what is the state of the goods, and where that goods currently is, and with whom that goods is. The authenticated record of this being shared between the participants divided as the customs in the form of government, the second being the trade participants, the international trading groups like Siam Cement Group or other groups in the country, and then from once the trade has been authenticated or an authenticated record of trade is created, how the banks can consume it for the multiple purposes of finance was something which is specifically that we worked around in 2020. So this platform became one of our core platforms to look at, with the specific value being added that the state of that trade is easily shareable between the participants, and when it is easily being shareable, the record is completely true at its fact. So this was one of our use cases where we used and we tried keeping or using the base fundamental of blockchain of data integrity here. Nothing more than that or nothing specific to that. So that's I can say is the first use case we worked, and the platform that we specifically worked over is Fabric. IBM has been and is generally always been a more Fabric centric organization and has always been working into Fabric. We are trying to make it possible that we work open and work with other platforms and other protocols, but the very solution we have specifically worked it around with Fabric. So from here, maybe I can actually go on to the next solution that we have specifically worked on, and this is something which we have very strongly worked in the last year. This is specifically, we call it as supply chain finance for multiple tiers of financing. So specifically, if I say what the problem we are trying to address is, the banks, whenever try to finance the entire supply chain, do not have the provenance of the supply chain that is moving. That increases the risk of financing and thereby the interest rates that it is offering to the different tiers of the supply chain. And that what we wanted to achieve here is that if we can remove the risk of not having the provenance with the banks to the banks, then essentially we directly impact the high risk that they carry with respect to financing the supply chain. And thereby we also reduce the interest rates that they are currently charging to the major corporates in the tier 1 or the smaller set of shops in the tier 3. So this solution we specifically delivered with Khun Thai Bank, and we are right now doing it with a couple of more banks in the region. And that's specifically what we try to achieve in the supply chain finance. Again, the solution was a very Fabric-centric solution, and we delivered it for a provenance of both domestic and international transactions. So as you said, as you see, most of our 2020 has been all around the trade authentication and utilization of that trade authentication for the finance purposes. And this is the same thing what we have been doing all the year at IBM and from IBM. The points that I can note down here from a use case perspective is the restriction of Fabric being a static in its nature and not dynamic like the many other protocols and platforms are, and cannot support the tokens, had a restrictions to us. And that's exactly what we are looking forward in 2021 in reference to the changes that we see is the globally the changes going to happen. So maybe I can quickly see on what are the use cases that we can look at for, or we are looking at IBM for 2021. So maybe before we go ahead, I'll stop to tell what are certain key changes that IBM is looking at right now. The first change that we are looking at is in November, Thailand entered into a regional comprehensive economic partnership agreement in the ASEAN nations. Now, these agreements generally are towards a free trade and free capital, free labor between the Southeast Asia nations. But this time in the RCEP agreement, they have specifically also mentioned on how the data economy should operate. That is, how the data between the multiple countries has to be exchanged, how the corporates who are operating in different countries can have a system that should be completely paperless. Second, there should also be corporates that should interact and trade and finance each other using a completely paperless mechanism. So this is something which RCEP specifically right now, or regional comprehensive economic party or treaty, has specifically mentioned in their Article 12 to say that the countries will look in 2021 to build in a network or a system like this, a trusted system of document sharing, a trusted system of finance between the banks in the different countries and also between the corporates in the different countries. So there is where we started looking at use cases like invoice marketplace, where there is a marketplace which captures the invoices from different corporates. So it's simply to say is, if there is a corporate who wants a finance against its invoice, rather than going to the bank, doing an entire KYC process, getting onboarded, then getting finance, then waiting for a month and a half to get completely finance process, can we build a marketplace which has on one side corporates getting simply and quickly onboarded, where there is a common SSI based corporate ID mentioned and the KYC being done by the banks, and at the same time the finance being offered over this marketplace. So specifically a corporate can go and post its invoice or any trade document and request for a finance. So that's one of the cases that we are looking at for the 2021 very crucially or very eagerly, basis the changes that globally we are seeing. The second that we are looking at is around the trade finance. The global trade, as we see now, that because the data economy because there has been specific reference that there has to be a infrastructure for the countries to trade in the data economy, there can be a possible infrastructure that can utilize this for the trade finance also, for the international trade finance. So that's the second use case that we are looking at. The third that we are looking at is specifically around the B2B payments. By B2B payments specifically, I mentioned the same RCEP agreement also mentions in its Article 13 that there has to be a payments infrastructure which can be low cost and seamless between the Southeast Asian countries. And that can be facilitated between the bank to bank and between a corporate to corporate. So there can be new solution that can come up which executes payment basis and trusted trade record. And that is where we are also looking at a third specific kind of a use case of business to business payments. Not a retail payment, but a business to business payment directly being facilitated in the least amount of time. So that's the third use case that we are looking at, specifically, if I can say so. Now, the second global change that we are looking at is the current year itself, the Personal Data Protection Act in Thailand in May 2020 got effectuated and is coming in force. In November 2020, there came a notification by Thailand government specifically stating that from the next year 2021, there will be specific requirements for the infrastructural changes in how the data will be stored, recorded, and managed between the supplier and buyer. Bank of Thailand specifically basis this act is also working on building a corporate digital ID in the country. Now, we think that there is where the corporate ID can go into multiple kinds of use cases that can come up. That can simply be the corporate ID used for a supplier to onboard a buyer versus a buyer to onboard a supplier, which can be completely simple onboarding between the buyer and supplier, reducing the current time which it takes of a couple of weeks. The same corporate ID can just be consumed by the banks for the KYC process as well, which can actually reduce the significant amount of time currently taken by the corporates and the banks or SMEs and the banks to do the KYC process. And so we think that the Personal Data Protection Act plus the Bank of Thailand's act on having a corporate ID in the nation digital corporate ID in the nation, can be a really good use case basis the self-sovereign identity to look at. Third, and a very relevant use case we are thinking is on the COVID vaccines supply chain provenance. So COVID vaccines will be around soon, are around soon, and sooner than later they will be coming into the Asia and Southeast Asia as well. So the supply chain provenance to be maintained and its health records to be maintained will we think maybe one of the important use cases to look at, and thereby may require a provenance engine based solutions to manage it. The fourth case, which independent of any major global regulation or any major global problem, the specific point that we are looking at in the fourth point is majorly around the digital assets. And why we are looking at the digital assets is digital assets have had its dump or slump in 2019, where it didn't have the growth they we need to have. But in 2020, I think there has been a significant growth specifically in Thailand with respect to the digital assets. And in coming 2021, we are looking at there can be multiple solutions, specifically with respect to the securities settlement, custody management at the banks to pick up really fast in the 2021. So we are already speaking to a couple of the banks in the region where we see that there can be picking up of a lot of picking up that can happen in the securities settlement portion. So these are if I can say four corners of the IBM's plan for looking at in the next 2021 in its particular box, because IBM has a specific four corner where it actually works majorly on the enterprises solution and doesn't get into the crypto solutions specifically. And this is where we look at enterprise specific solutions in the next 2021. Max, can we have a round of maybe discussions and then I go and speak about each of the cases? I think that can be a good one.
Yes. Any questions?
Anybody has any questions?
I have one.
Yeah, please go ahead. Good.
IBM always has been hyperledger fabric.
Yeah.
You are the company behind it. So what changed? Why are you looking at other protocol?
Right. So a good question, Max. So as you said, IBM has been always a fabric specific entity, and what we are looking at is the use cases like the digital assets, where we see that there can be a lot of value and traction that can come in. Secondly, use cases like SSI. These use cases we are not able to try and go ahead in the market using the current fabric structure. And even if we use them, it is becoming very complicated because we have to use these smart contracts, specifically the Hyperledger Fabric chain code to do everything what we want to do. So molding it to do every possible use case is something which is very difficult, and that's the reason why, at least specifically in Thailand, we have started moving to other platforms and started speaking to Ethereum and with a tattoo right now, and a couple of more platforms. Even we are trying to speak to Corda. So that's specifically where we are now moving ahead, and our major focus for the use of any other platform would be in the SSI, that is self-sovereign identity space, and the digital asset space, because right now we believe that Fabric is not a great solution to managers. Fabric is not a great platform to manage solutions like that. So that's an answer. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe a quick one. So IBM is obviously global.
Yeah.
When we run this meetup, we will focus on Bangkok and Thailand. And so I'm curious if you can share more about what you're seeing at IBM, maybe a regional level, or maybe some other countries.
Right.
The use cases and the work being done.
Right. So if I can say, these are specifically that we are looking at for the Thailand as region. And these use cases are Thailand region specific use cases. But if I can say globally, there are two more use cases that we are very strongly working on in the enterprise level. One is we have a solution called Learning's Credential Network, which is apparently one of the largest credentials network. Its purpose is very traditional, very specific to actually authenticating a particular person's learnings credential, his experience credentials, whenever he is approaching a particular employer or any university. So, for example, today I move from a undergrad to a grad school or an MBA school or an a Master of Science school. The Master of Science school or an MBA school can immediately authenticate my records right from the start of my 10th grade or 11th grade. So they can actually go ahead and authenticate the entire record, including my employment records. So the use case is very traditional, very old one. But what we could do is, using SSI, we could actually create an ID for the participants, and using the same SSI, we have also made possible the authentication of it and the collation of the large set of records. So important point also to note from my side is this we are doing it with the US government. So it's a pretty huge exercise for us. The second point that, or the second part that use case that I would like to mention, we are moving really fast on is on the digital currencies. So earlier, and that is also a place where we are trying to move away from Fabric and go into other platforms, where digital currencies, IBM didn't have much of a presence, never actually did a great exercise. What we are now trying to do is move away from Fabric and get into the digital currencies as the use case with the different governments. Couple of them which I can mention is, we are trying to do it with Australia. We were trying to do it with Hong Kong as well. So that's an overall, if I can say, the two other use cases that we are specifically looking at in the other regions. Most importantly, what we are looking, and I was chatting with Khun Bank some time back, is that we are specifically looking at the KYC and corporate ID as a very strong use case across globally in IBM. So we think that 2021 there can be a very strong push on the self-sovereign identity based KYC solutions for the 2021. So that's I think, Gulem, I can answer your question. Any other questions?
Maybe one more then.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, at Datto we partner with Consensus.
Yep.
On the enterprise side of Ethereum, there are different clients.
Right.
Two of them belong to Consensus today.
Mm-hmm.
If IBM is entering the Ethereum space, we consider building an enterprise Ethereum client as a way to participate to the community and maybe also kind of balance the dependency on Consensus that we might see today.
We can do that actually. IBM would like to do something like that, really, to say. And more balance we can. So if I can, okay, let me put it this way. IBM is a services mammoth specifically. It's a system integration and services mammoth. It can know the least about a platform or a technology. So what it can do better is partner with someone and actually start building any kind of services solution. And we would like to create that balance if it is with anyone who brings in the expertise around the specific platform. So that's a simple way to put it. Sorry? Okay. So yeah, that's an answer from us. So yeah. So maybe I can take a quick round on what we are trying to build as the use cases, right? So maybe a 1-inch deep down on what we are building really and what we are doing really. What we are trying to build, and these are the use cases on which we are today actually working on. I mean, our teams are actually working on in different regions, and we are trying to bring this to life. So what we are looking at is to build an invoice marketplace where, as I mentioned earlier, is the suppliers and buyers can post in their invoices, and the financial and the banks can finance it. We are also offering the banks an option that if, say, for example, today a particular participant comes and a particular supplier comes and gives me an invoice, which I have financed as a bank. And tomorrow I understand that the particular participant is not a good participant. He will default it later. I may be having a loss in near future because of this supplier. Then I can, or I am carrying a very high risk over this supplier. Then actually I can resell it. I can resell those invoices to the other banks, other financial institutions. Today as well it is possible, or this is a trade practice which is naturally existing, but it takes a lot of time, and till actual trade gets executed, the supplier defaults and the bank has to take that loss. So that trade doesn't get completed of reselling, and we are trying to make a marketplace in a manner that the time gap that the supplier takes for getting a finance, the bank takes for reselling that invoice which has come for a finance, is brought down. It is brought down significantly. And how we want to do it is by creating an authenticated trade record. So if the trade record is authenticated and the documents record is also authenticated, that it is not a duplicate trade record, then it's better approach for financing or creating an invoice marketplace. So that's an overall approach that we are looking at, building a market invoice kind of a marketplace. The second that we are doing is majorly around the B2B payments. What we are doing in the B2B payment space is, though this is a very detailed architecture to look at, but if I can say specifically, we have a trade lens and a trade network solution that we are already building up or have built up. What we are trying to also bring in with the use of an invoice marketplace is to bring together the supplier, buyer, and buyers banks and supplier banks together. As an extension to the same exercise that we did by creating a marketplace of invoice and trade authentication solution, we also want to post that authenticated trade note to the payments, and in a manner that the banks can easily execute the payments record. And the transaction between the supplier and buyer's bank, or the two banks, can be executed very quickly. The same thing we also want to do in the case of the international payments, where there are other payment gateways like Visa or MasterCard, etc. Right? So the simple fact over this is an extension of we moving from trade authentication to invoice marketplace to also making possible the payments over that invoice marketplace. That's where we call it as B2B payments. So before I go ahead, maybe I stop because I actually go on to a separate use case altogether. Any questions otherwise right now? Okay. The next use case that we are looking at specifically is on the trusted supplier buyers onboarding, or trusted registrations. Again, we align our entire idea with the Bangkok Thailand's exercise of having a corporate ID in the country and making possible a faster registrations of the supplier and buyer. So what we are building is a blockchain network where there will be a buyer and supplier, and the and at the same time there will be third-party verifiers, lawyers, and auditors in the same network who can, and the banks, in specific reference to Thailand as a region, where the banks can authenticate the ID of the supplier and buyer, and the buyer supplier can do it for each of them. And if required, in a scenario where the banks want third parties to support for a supplier, for a lawyer or an auditor to also certify, the same network can support it. We have delivered this solution very much in North America, and we had got a good amount of success there. What we are trying to do is trying to bring this with the SSI solution, self-sovereign identity solution idea, club it over together and make possible a faster supplier and buyer registration. So this is something which we are very strongly looking at, if I can say, from a corporate KYC or KYB between the supplier and buyer. So that's a 2021 agenda where we will be stressing a lot around this particular use case for the 2021, right? So and maybe this is the last use case. Now, all our earlier use cases were either or around the trade as the fundamental, either or around the trade as the fundamental. What we have moved to is actually a different use case altogether. What we are trying to do is work with the custodians, banking custodians, who are actually dealing with the securities management. So traditionally today, if there is any security by financial security or a bond or a savings bond or any particular equity or any particular instrument which are getting traded between the two participants, the banks as a participant has to do a lot of exercise at the background, wherein they have to maintain the books of record on the securities movement. They also have to maintain a they also have to maintain a record of all the payments that are moving. Now, in case where there are foreign investors who wants to come in and invest, they can't come in very easily in Thailand or any other country in anywhere in the world. They need to go through a multiple set of regulations for onboarding and also for trading. The problem that we looked at here is that the securities are not completely dematerialized or immobilized. By that I mean is the securities are not completely digitized in a manner that it can be tracked. Their movement can be tracked continuously and recorded. That in a securities market we call it as immobilization. The immobilization has not really happened in a complete nature in global market and even in Thailand market. So to achieve that, what we are doing is to make possible the Securities Exchange Thailand, the settlement organization, the investment bankers, brokers, the payment systems, and the custody services. We can have a system which can record the identity of the security, the transfers that they are doing, all the settlement instructions and the token settlement instructions, and their continuous tracking of the security position by way of a token. So what we are simply trying to do is convert the entire securities positions today into a token holding, which will be held in a wallet between the multiple participants. And whenever a transaction happens between the different participants, the books, the banks that are custodian bankers today and maintaining the books can automatically update their books and can automatically update their payment system, so thereby making the system very simple and very easy to operate. So this is one of the use cases which we are very strongly working right now in other ASEAN regions, but we soon will be bringing this to Thailand as well. So before I put on some maybe closing comments, any questions? Otherwise, please be free and please highlight and yeah.
We will take the question after.
Yeah, sure. I think
Thank you, Sanat.
Thanks a lot for that. And yeah, we will take some questions a bit later. I think it's going to be a good complement with what Khun Bank is going to show. And we'll have a discussion after that. So, Khun Bank, thank you. Smart Contract Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. It's pretty hard to speak after IBM because they already took all the interesting content. So I try to make it more interesting as much as I can. My company is Smartcontract Blockchain Studio. We found in 2016. We specifically do the blockchain for enterprise and government solution. Platform we use, we provide Ethereum, and we provide Hyperledger, Fabric, also Tendermint. All three are already in production network already, and we plan to support to include the Hyperledger Besu in our product portfolio in the first quarter of next year. We studied that, and they are pretty interesting technology. I believe most of you guys here already know what is Hyperledger Besu, but in case some of people who on the live who want to know what is Hyperledger Besu. It is Ethereum client by Hyperledger Foundation, and it is designed or aimed to be the enterprise class Hyperledger client. So that will be interesting with very interesting and unique feature you can find on the Hyperledger Besu, and we study that and we plan to support that hopefully by early of next year. Our product, we have the solution for digital identity, self-certified identity, eKYC, single sign-on, and verifiable credential. Another product we provide and already have customer is the e-document, digital signature, e-invoice, e-certification, and also the data exchange. We also have a solution on the cryptocurrency side, which including the digital asset tokenizations, stablecoin, and DeFi. And also, we have a specific. The consent management and personal data is a mix of the previous product. We mix both digital identity, KYC, and digital documents into the consent management, ROPA, and also PDPA compliance. Also on the healthcare side, which is pretty strong industry that smart contract participate in, we have a blockchain solution for personal health records and personal health information exchange, which again, based on the eKYC, based on the digital identity, based on self-sovereign identity, and also the data exchange on blockchain that we already built. Our customer, a bit of our customer, we provide the logistics and supply chain solution for SCG Logistics. We one of the team that provide the bond on blockchain for Thai BMA is used by Toyota Leasing and KBank. We provide the P2P energy trading platform for EGAT. Also on healthcare, we provide the e-referral solution, the patient referral between hospital with the NGSSO, and currently we are working with the primary care office for the digital identity and health data exchange on blockchain. Also, I'm the consultant for SME Bank for digital ID and mobile banking. We have our own research and development inside of a company as well. We invent the interactive Hyperledger Fabric deployment (CLI) for anyone who have experience in Hyperledger Fabric will know how much it's hard and how complicated it is to deploy a Hyperledger node. So I try to make it easier and reduce the human error along the process. So with this tool, it requires like nearly zero knowledge, and the deployment time will be a lot minimized. Also, I help the DGA, Digital Government Agency, write this book. It is the blockchain for government service. We have an award as well. We have got the best health technology innovation from Frost and Sullivan. I gave a spoke in blockchain at World Economic Forum. Also, we have got the best health tech startup award from Rice Bowl. And for this year, we represent Thailand in ASEAN ICT Award 2020 in the public sector service. Also, I present our solution to Prime Minister as well. And this is our latest product. It's born on blockchain that Toyota built the blockchain upon. That release issue the bond upon that, and KBank also used our platform to issue the first FX bond in Thailand. I have a few case studies to discuss here. It's about the bond as well. Why we need that solution? Why we need bond and blockchain solution? What is it? The benefit? In bond and in securities and in capital market in general, we can split the process into two phases: pre-trade and post-trade. Pre-trade is when you issue the asset, issue the securities, and provide the book building, do the reservation and allotment. And after that, once the allotment and once the reservation finished, it will be the post trade. That also include the settlement process and also the custodian and registrar process. This the project that I work for Thai BMA and Toyota Leasing and K-Bank is focusing on the post trade. We provide the infrastructure for the registrar and custodian. Also, and why we need that? Why we need that? Because currently, especially in Thailand, it takes 14 days just to do the book closing and pay the interest for a bond. And this thing happens every day for every bond that issue on the market. But with this technology, because all the registration, all the ownership of the bond or for the assets is already on blockchain, so it can provide the real-time book closing, and also the interest payment can be done by smart contract. And also it provide the better transparency as well for auditing and for the good governance of the customer. Also, another project that we are actively involving in is the decentralized healthcare. We provide the digital ID and also the health information exchange platform using Tendermint. Why it is important? Because it can provide a continuous care. Currently in Thailand and in many countries around the world, when you go to hospital, your data is there. If you want to move to another hospital, sometimes you have to request for your data to be moved in paper or in some cases in CD-ROM or in thumb drive. But with this, it can provide a continuous care. You can change hospital anywhere you want, and all your data, all your history, especially allergies, intolerance, and medication records can follow you. So it's enabled the patient-centric. Previously, it is the hospital-centric or service provider-centric, but with this technology, we can provide the patient-centric healthcare. Also, this project uses HR7 Fire, which is pretty new, relatively new, and pretty complicated standard. And in Thailand, many organizations, including Ministry of Public Health, trying to implement the HR7 Fire as well. This is one among the early projects that implement this standard. Yes.
One question on this one: is it with one special hospital for the moment, or is it a solution that can be spread to every hospital?
It is pilot in a few hospitals. Currently, we are working with Ramathibodi Ratchavithi and a hospital in Nakhon Sawan and a couple of hospitals in Kambang Phet and Phetchabun as a pilot. And my customer already have a plan to expand this to also inside the pilot province and also outside pilot province. And eventually, we hope to make it nationwide. And a bit of sneak peek, which is surprisingly in line with what IBM just say. It's not confirmation, but I think it shows the trends, how the industry and blockchain industry in Thailand move forward next year. Next year, we'll provide the supply chain financing for a group of company in Thailand. We'll use the verifiable credential technology framework on blockchain, also eKYC and for single sign-on for a customer in Thailand as well. We'll use the digital ID and self-sovereign identity on blockchain. Debenture bond, again, using, especially we implement DeFi on Basil. That will be very challenging and very interesting. Also, on the PDPA, the personal data, we have a few customers who want to do. It's not for the PDPA and consent. It's not only the records of the processing. It has to be traced back to who did the processing. So it has to be the good combination between eKYC, very strong authentication protocol, and also the digital signature for to make the chain of proof back to the who is the actor. And will be so much more very interesting project that we are looking forward to as well. And in case you would like to contact us for inquiries, for more detail about what we can do for your company, contact me at hello@smartcontractthailand.com.
Thank you.
Maybe before we go to the Q&A, we'll ask you to sit down and first, any questions from the attendants to Khun Bank? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for the hospital project. Will that cover only the government hospital? Will it expand to the private hospital? Because in Thailand we have many the hospital chain they would be interested in.
Right. One of the most challenging things we found in this project is how to connect hospital from various administration, because as you said, we have a public hospital, we have government hospital, we have the hospital under Bangkok Metropolis Administration, we even have hospital under universities. So they are under different regulations, different business model, different administration. In this pilot, we already experiment that in Phetchabun. We connect hospital from under government hospital. We connect public hospital. We even connect the hospital under the military organization and also public clinic. So we already pilot that and know how to expand that across the across multiple administration already.
One more. Actually, I have one question related to this one. You work a lot with kind of public and government, and it's often something which is very difficult. So how did you manage it, and how do you approach it, and how do you feel the Thai government is moving toward blockchain?
Luckily, I think I have found a good customer. So there are different in speed. Eventually, definitely different in speed, different in how they make things done, paperwork and those kind of things. But luckily, they work for the same goal, so I can treat them the same. Treat them as a team who want to make this thing, to make the change in Thailand, to make change in this industry and make that happen.
Was it difficult to start with the government, or is it that they wanted to launch a project, so it went fast, or how was it?
It's different, but it's not hard. It's just different because they have a totally different process, different time frame, different expectation. But I still do believe that even with the public company, we have different pace, different kind of customer as well. So as a service provider, I think we have to understand and learn how to work with them.
I may be having a follow-up question on that. So, and I think many use cases have this problem. When you are approaching a hospital, and specifically a private versus a public versus a government versus a military hospital, the way in which they are consuming the health record would be completely different. So how do we achieve a consensus in it? I mean, from a technical standpoint as well from a negotiation of the solution standpoint, right?
Okay. We use health data standard in healthcare. In healthcare there are many health data standard on many kind of level. For example, the one that I mentioned, HL7, it is pretty low level. It tells you how to communicate at like how the frame format should be, how the data field should be communicated in each use case, and there are another standard to tell what is the code for the drug, the code for each symptom, the code on the is that the how the doctor treat patient. There are different kind of code on that. So we decided to implement the international standard called Supplier, and also we use ICD-10 and ICD-10 and ICD-9 to tell the symptom of each patient. So it's easier at a certain level because everyone.
The standard is common.
Yes, but not every hospital implement that standard. So there is a hard work to convert.
So you have to convert them into using that international standard.
Yes, yeah, right. It's one of the challenging part of the project as well.
Understood. Okay.
Yes, sir?
Just on that subject, are you aware of any other countries that have implemented something similar in their healthcare system for sharing of medical information across hospitals?
I have read that from news that there are a few initiatives across the globe that try to implement this, but I think what we have to consider first is how the administration and regulation in each country different. For example, in Singapore, there are every hospital and clinic are under the same regulation, so government can tell everyone to put the data back to government. It's Sing Health. So there actually no need for blockchain in health data there, for example, or in Sweden, the large country but very small population. There are only, I think, 2 to 3 HIS vendor or hospital software vendor there. So the interoperability is pretty easy. To make it apple to apple, I think we have to compare the scenario to the country that look pretty much like Thailand, for example, Taiwan.
Yes, Dan.
Well, it looked to me like you were presenting 3 different chains to your customers. What have been some of the reasons why the different customers or you suggesting the different chains? Was it like the Hyperledger, Tendermint, and Ethereum?
So how?
Is it 3 different platforms?
Well, it depends on use case and depends on how the final picture, and also depends on how to distribute the trust as well. For example, first of all, I don't think Ethereum is not for enterprise. And right, enterprise can use public blockchain if their use case match what public blockchain can offer. In some cases, it is for example, a single organization or a group of organizations need a consensus from every people around the world. Public blockchain make a lot of sense in that case. But another case, same group of company need only the confirmation or all the thing that they can prove is already know inside this group of companies. So private blockchain, for example, Hyperledger Fabric or Tendermint or any kind of private blockchain makes sense.
And is it your customer choosing the chain, or is it you recommending them?
I recommend them, but their input and their restriction is pretty important as well. For example, I have a customer who requires everything to be on premise, like zero cloud usage. So we have to understand and adapt to the solution to their restriction.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll add to that. So most of the clients, even which IBM sees today, asks for generally all on-prem solutions, and in such So in such situations, we actually then go ahead with no option on going for a native fabric kind of a solution, or we actually have to have an supplementary options. So at that time, at that point in time, actually many a times we also think that maybe fabric may not be a good option as well. So yeah, it actually many times really depends upon where we are deploying the solutions. Really, so say, and that's actually a decision maker for the platform as well, right? Am I correct with my?
Yes, totally correct.
Okay. And does it reply to your question? Yeah. I have a question for both of you. I mean, we all have been in the blockchain space for quite some time now, and I would like to have your view of how do you see enterprise blockchain at the end of 2020 compared to what it was 2019, or let's say maybe 2018. We feel that there is a lot of change, but I would like to have both of your opinion.
Okay. So let me say it this way. So 2018, the point is the 2018 versus 19 versus 20 for, and if I can speak more from an IBM's point of view, we looked at it that the value or the business value was not really defined when we started in 2018, and the use cases we were dealing in 2018. And there was never a match between the use cases that were being listed down versus the value propositions that were listed down. And the blockchain's potential, it was, I can say, high, but in other ways it was not weighed correctly. And that is something which I think now is moving away from 2018 to 19, 19 to 20. I'll also supplement this fact because there is a lot of effort that is going on from Bank of Thailand's perspective specifically. The second, I can say, when Bank of Thailand has done, we ourselves have worked with initiatives or organizations like Blockchain Community Initiatives or KBTG. These organizations, and with Bank of Thailand itself coming up very strongly on the blockchain use cases, I think the way of looking at blockchain use case as an enterprise has changed with in reference or at the center point as the value proposition. Now, to a concluding comment, I also see that blockchain is now moving very close to a specific use case on KYC. And in my personal opinion, because I have seen a huge jump on in last 6 months or 8 months on the KYC as a use case, and that coming across from Bank of Thailand itself. So that is something which I think is where now slowly or steadily in 2020, where we are trying to allocate the value proposition right. 2021, we will very well have the answer to the questions like which chain should go to which use case basis the value that it is offering. So I think that's the chain that I look at.
So you mean that now companies are doing what they should do? They look at return on investment.
Simply to say, yes, companies are doing what they should do versus companies where simply, I mean, in my personal opinion, and I have done that as well. We should stop selling technology. Let's stop doing that. Let's start first selling value proposition, value to our clients. What value is the bank making out? So most of our clients are banks in the region. So what is the value that the bank is getting out of it, or what the customer is getting out of it? And then let's start speaking about what chain and what blockchain is.
Okay, Khun Bank maybe.
Yeah, I think I would like to resonate on what Sanat said. In my opinion, and from my direct experience, blockchain is losing its illusion, like in illusion phase, losing its sexiness, and people are getting understand more what blockchain is about and what we can do and what we cannot do. So the consequence is first, customer focus on solution, on what is the solution they want, not just any blockchain. Before this, they want anything that blockchain. And later on, I found out that customer more focus on solution, not only blockchain, and also they start to think about business model, how they can integrate blockchain into the revenue stream, how can make money from that project instead of doing blockchain for just a POC. So that's one of a few change I noticed during the year.
Okay, and just to resonate on this one, when you talk to a company, a buyer who is willing to launch a blockchain project, how do you feel? Is it changing now? They have to bring return on investment. Are they more educated? Do you think that they know what they are talking about more in 2020 than they were last year?
Right, exactly. The question changed. Previously, last year, question will be how blockchain can help my industry. Like question today will be, I have this problem, and I think blockchain can help me by this and that. So can you help me implement this? That's the change question.
Correct. I'll just add one more question to that. I am even being asked how much is the change, because I have been lately being asked that question. So with a couple of my clients is that last year, as Kunmang said, yes, how blockchain can help me. Now, very start of this year, we started getting the questions, as Kunmang said, is this is the problem. You tell me how the blockchain solutions can really fit in this problem. Now the approach is saying that we know the problem, we even know the solution because we have the team who can work for the solution with you, but tell me how much, because you are the experts. So that's, and I think that question will become more stronger and steeper and sharper in 2021, and thereby the choice of use cases also.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on what we just discussed? So yes, sir.
Yes, sorry. I'm more interested in the project time frame for the blockchain project. If customer asks you, how long can you fast roll out the blockchain? What is that?
Nice question. And this one you answer.
From your experience.
From experience, the answer can be vary from weeks to months to years. It really depends on what is the outcome that customer want to see, and how fast they want to see the change, and how fast they can change. Because blockchain is not it. There are technologies that can provide the instant change. There are technologies that require the fundamental change in company to make it happen. So it really depends on many factors. But I have funny story. My customer, there is a magic number. I don't know why, but my customer always asks for 3 months or 6 months. I don't know why.
That magic number works for me as well. So the same is magic number for me, because and I think I little bit know about the why that magic number as well. So there are two reasons, and at least for my case, it is banks who have responded it that way. Is it depends upon number of participants also that you are working with. Second, number of changes in the processes also. Like Kunbang mentioned it earlier, if you have to convince bank, and I think the skill and science of negotiations is one of the most important skills here, because if you have larger participants to speak with and you have to agree most of them to come to one standard, practically you have to tell them also that why changing to this standard is a value proposition. Selling a technology or a software or even a system or even a infrastructure is simple, but selling a change in process is very difficult. Though that making that possible in a blockchain stretches that time frame of 3 months to even 3 years possible very much. And I am actually seeing a live use case where we may have actually deliveries in 3 years and client is still okay till the value proposition is as high as that. But coming back to the question, why 3 months and 6 months is also because in one particular quarter, the bank or corporate understands that whether the ROI will come or not. If it understands that ROI is not coming, it will stop the project there and not go from pilot to production. And that's why one MVP or one pilot to 2 pilots or second grade of production, 3 months to 6 months, 2 quarters, and it will work off. If it really works, then they will actually have a continuous engagement with you after that. So that's how at least I have experienced it.
And if I can add something, where blockchain is moving very fast, right? The product that are on the market today, most of them didn't exist last year.
Yeah.
So, for example, what took us like 6 months to 1 year to build last year, it's taking us 1, 2, or 3 months, I would say.
Absolutely.
So it's reducing the cost and the time drastically. So it's really different. As you mentioned, there is these 3 months, but basically what takes time, it's not developing the blockchain project, it's actually talking with the team internally, having everybody agreed, talking to different departments. It's a big change for them. It's for every software. When you implement a software in a company, it takes a lot of change for their habits. So this is what takes time. It's at the client side mostly, not on the development side.
Right. True. I agree with you.
Yes.
So it's just more of an open question, just with the dealings that Bank have had with the government already. I was wondering if there's any talk of integrating blockchain with land titles in Thailand, and like that sort of application of blockchain or open questions over on this stage, just because it seems to be such a mess in this country. With all due respect.
I'm thinking how much I can say. Okay, let me put it this way. There are a couple of software vendor and a couple of team talk to land department for blockchain use case over last 2 years. But how it will be going and how the outcome will be, I still have no clear idea how it will look like. But there are an active parties, teams, software vendor, and SI vendor trying to make this happen.
On this part, there is such a project going on in US, in Wyoming, where they actually put the land registration on blockchain, but they started with one county, then another, then it's on the state-wise. So it's really gradually going, and I'm not Thai, but been living here for quite some time. I believe that before we see the whole Thailand land department on blockchain, it's gonna take some time.
Right. So I'll add to that. I mean, I have tried doing this with some other countries. Maybe when I was in India, I was trying to do this with India as well. And India is a much bigger and larger mess. So with all due respect again, so with it extent and whatever else. So point is that across globally, land titles are currently in the number line, they are in -1 or -2 situation. And what we are speaking about with them is to jump from -1 to 2 in the number line. So we are saying that we will digitize the records, also make possible the record being completely non-tamperable, and then saying that the titles are continuously tracked and record, and also the title are being provenanced across their life cycle. It's a huge change. For a government official, you see, from a vision perspective, it's a big change for them to look at. So that's why I think personally it will take a long time for something like that.
Just to come back on Thailand as well, you know, when you talk about US, France, Australia, basically people know to whom the land belongs to. In Thailand, it's still something that you are struggling with. So yes, so yes, negotiation.
That problem is actually around in most of South Asia and the Southeast Asian countries, except maybe Singapore. Yeah.
And I think that there are challenging solutions for that, because I think, as we already discussed, the move from government will be slow. I see a couple of movements from private sector to try to make this happen without government. Like there are a project that they have like a couple of square meters for parking space, and they tokenize it on blockchain, so that there are just a one way to make this happen, and there are a couple of solutions around the world to try to make this happen without government. So I think this is what blockchain empowers us to make this happen without the central body.
Yeah, true. I agree.
And okay, I have a question more on, I would say on Thailand, of course, and what, in your opinion, will be like the biggest change in blockchain for Thailand? Is it central digital currency, central bank digital currency? Is it anything else about crypto? Anything else? Maybe a big enterprise like CP adopting blockchain for everything? What do you think is going to be like a major change for Thailand?
Yeah, if you ask me, and if you look at Thailand specifically in the last 1 2 years, there has been every particular government body, and I personally feel Thailand in South Asia and in Southeast Asia has been fastest in blockchain, in my personal opinion. The reason is being every particular government body, including Bank of Thailand, ITMX, ETDA, are moving specifically in a good speed since last 6 months on blockchain. Because I mean, IBM ourselves have worked in multiple fronts with them on the blockchain part, and where we are working all around is, again, I think I mentioned it, is on KYC at the first, and why and how they are looking towards this entire solution trail is that have a unique digital ID, then have a unique trade record. That's your base infrastructure. Then move that based infrastructure to having dedicated solutions like trade finance, supply chain finance, trade logistics management, and multiple other solutions for each specific body to operate. And this is not being driven by the large, I mean, this is being driven by the large corporates as the consumers, but are actually being driven other way around through Bank of Thailand. And I'm very specifically bullish because Bank of Thailand is very bullish around the technology and is moving really fast. And separately, they are also being pushed in very strongly by organizations on payment side like ITMX, or they are also being pushed in by ETDA specifically for SSI, wherein ETDA wants to say that the Electronic Transaction Act mentions that there has to be a digital signature, but why not I actually authenticate it by bringing a SSI solution in the market and say that this is a valid signature solution and you can use it, start using it for digital IDs or corporate ID. So that is why I see it more for Thailand. There is a natural push coming in from the government body, specifically around the identity and trade, which will then push the and which is being pushed by the banks. In my opinion, it has been that if an organization is, if any government or government is pushing everything from a bank's side, the economy will naturally consume it. So that's how I see as a change
I
specifically
agree with you.
for Thailand.
Totally agree. Totally agree with the government regulation and government side. And I have another side to discuss as well. If we take a step back, why SEC works so fast on the Digital Asset Act, and why Bank of Thailand and central bank around the world move so fast with the CBDC? It is because the global trend for SEC, it is clearly it's ICO trend around that time, and why central bank around the world, include Bank of Thailand, work specifically on the CBDC because at that time it was Libra, now it's Ethereum, right? So I think there are two forces that play that interact with each other that shape the Thai blockchain ecosystem. One is international from global player, and they change the way Thai regulators and regulation work and how they say things, and they make the real change in Thailand, like Sanat say.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? Everybody seems convinced that you're right. And maybe one last question. After we have some nice warm pizzas and beers for everybody to enjoy, but I think everybody wants to drink and eat. And then, yeah, all right. But thank you very much to all of you for joining. Please stay and enjoy some drinks with us. And thank you very much, Sanat. Thank you very much, Khun Bank. Really appreciate that you are participating. Thank you.